Welcome to episode 45 of the FoodGrads Podcast, the podcast where we explore careers in the food, beverage, and agricultural industries. I'm your host, Veronica Hislop, a PhD candidate in molecular science and career partner with FoodGrads. This week on the podcast, I interviewed Vasudha Sabharwal, a food safety professional working in the meat industry. Vasudha is an individual with a rich career working in the meat industry and other sectors as well. She has a master's degree in Bioresource Engineering for Integrated Food and Bioprocessing from McGill University. In this episode, Vasudha really spent the time walking me through her career journey in food safety, talking about each role along the way and what it entails, what it felt like working there, and the things that she picked up along the way. I picked her brain about the different skills that are needed in the industry and how she was able to specifically develop them. She also broke down what it's like working in the meat industry and cleared up some misconceptions that someone might have. Throughout this episode, Vasudha shared a lot of wisdom that students should really take. You can tell that this advice is coming from experiences, personal growth, and even mistakes that Vasudha herself has made and grown from. I can't wait to share this episode with you. So, enough of that introduction. Let's get on with the show. So, thank you, Vasudha, for coming on the show. I have been wanting to learn a little bit more about the industries that you've been working in with the meat industry. FoodGrads has partnered a lot with like Maple Leaf Foods and those types of things, but I haven't really talked about someone who's had that like first-hand account of it. So I'm really excited to learn more about that and just your career story of how you got to where you are today.
Yes. Thank you so much, Veronica, for having me here. I'm really glad that somebody like you has come up with this kind of podcast where people in the industry can share their experiences and how they got to a point where they are in their career. And it's really helpful for the new grads that are coming out. I wish we had this, or I think I wasn't aware about it. When I graduated, I was lost. But no, this is really good. It creates that motivational spirit in the new grads. And I see that in the industry, people do mention about this, that, hey, do you know about food grads? And I'm like,
wait, hold on. You're saying people are actually mentioning about it?
Yeah, I work at a plant right now. So someone mentioned to me about them and I was like, hey.
That's amazing. That really is. Wow, that's good to hear.
Yes, definitely. My journey in my career has been long. It did take a lot of time.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully much less than what I see with people in the industry. But yes, so I came to Canada in 2015. I am basically originally from India. So I came here. I wanted to do a master's degree from a good university. In my head, I was like, if I want to go abroad and study, it has to be a university which has a great ranking. It has the world ranking or something. I don't know if it meant as much, but yes, this is what I had in mind. So I went to McGill in 2015. I did my master's in Bioresource Engineering, Integrated Food and Bioprocessing. At that point, I did get the opportunity to study a few food science courses. I did not focus much on the engineering part of the program much because I don't come from engineering background. I have my bachelor's in biotechnology. So I was more inclined towards the food science courses. And I did talk to some of the professors in the university, and they mentioned how big of career growth it would provide me. Just went with food science. So I did a few courses from there, and I finished my degree in 2017. After 2017, I worked for a very small company in Quebec because you have to be bilingual to be working for good plants over there. Like I think we have Maple Leaf over there and few others, but I am not bilingual. I do understand French, just few words. I am very hesitant and shy in talking in French. So I was like, probably that's not what Quebec wasn't where I was seeing myself to stay for future. I worked there as a QA supervisor because it was a really small company. They were trying to set up and make some name in the industry, but unfortunately they didn't do well. I was working there as QA supervisor and I was doing actually a lot of things. I was also managing the human resource part of the company. We were very short-handed. I was sometimes also working on the production floor with the general labor production technicians. And I was just fresh out of the university. I got information about the Canadian inspection and the procedures and the standard operating procedures, because I wasn't really hands-on at that point. Decided to move out of Quebec and I came to Ontario, and I felt like in order for me to actually learn thoroughly about the industry, I need to start from the bottom. Like I need to start from the entry level and see where it takes me. So then I started working as a QA technician in one of the companies here in Etobicoke. I worked there for 8 months, but my job wasn't just restricted to working as a QA technician. So I was just not checking about the production lines for CCPs, that's critical control points. So I was not just doing that. I was also responsible for any incoming raw material coming into the facility, any export that was going out of the facility. I was involved with CFIA, getting it inspected and doing this paperwork for that. Then I also supported the research and development part of the company as well. I feel like that it was a really great learning experience over there. I did learn a lot about how various things happen if you're working in ready to eat industry. It was an egg facility. We were also dealing with some part of meat products. We had bacon coming in. We imported it from US. So I was dealing that and getting the regs to sign and getting to learn about the regulations and making sure all the production lines were running fine. We definitely had non-compliances. I can never say that any company would not have that. We definitely had non-compliances, and we did root cause analysis because I was also a part of that team. We were very short-handed in that plant as well. I was working in the afternoon shift, so we never had a supervisor or manager for QA in the afternoons. We only had one production technician, a QA technician. So I was the only one who was working there. And it was all on me, all the decision making and everything I had to do. So I worked there for 8 months. And I decided I would now want to work with the kind of experience I have. I want to work for a bigger organization, which has bigger management and lots of plants where the opportunity for growth is more. That's when I decided to work for Maple Leaf. I applied for the FSQA coordinator role. That's the food safety quality assurance coordinator role at Maple Leaf's Brampton Poultry. So I worked there for a year. It was a mat leave coverage that I was covering up. Because of COVID, I also got to work as FSQA supervisor for 3 months over there. And for another 3 months, I also was able to work as HACCP coordinator. All in all, I was doing more of office work, if you would say. I was on the floor, but I was definitely looking into the records and any certificate of analysis, sending samples to the lab, receiving the results back, and talking to CFI officials if there was any non-compliance. Then I was also dealing with some customer complaints if we had any, and any supplier complaints. And then we were doing some reassessments on various prerequisites of HACCP. HACCP is hazard analysis and critical control points. So we were doing these annual reassessments. I was the first point of contact for the CFI officials in the company itself. So in case the CFI officials needed any paperwork or they needed some explanation on any sort of thing that was happening in the organization or I would say establishment, so they would come to me and I would provide them with the documentation and the information that was required. So yeah, I was doing all of that in a summary. And now I work for CFIA. I work as a meat inspector. Just got promoted.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you.
There's so many things that you've pointed out with your career that have been things that have been on my mind and things that I think that students think about. You mentioned one thing that you said that just as a personal experience I resonate with was just the shifts and just how different shifts have different vibes to them. And it's not something that people necessarily will see. If a student was applying for a job, you see the role of the role, but you don't really realize how different shifts have their own energy to them. And I too felt that when I was working shift work in the afternoon shift, just felt so different without the QA supervisor there because we were a small company as well.
Yes.
So it's just giving me some flashback memories.
Definitely. Afternoon shift, that's what I say. Like to everybody in the industry, afternoon shift is very relaxed.
Hmm.
Everybody wants to go home on time. That's one thing
Yes.
in the afternoon.
Yes.
And they don't want anyone to be on top of their head. Um, they don't want anyone stopping the lines or putting product on hold.
Hmm.
Afternoon is a whole different vibe altogether. If you're working in the mornings, yes, where you will have plant manager over there. You will have the operations person, you will have production managers, production supervisors, and QA manager. Everybody would be there. And it's like very motivating when you see all of this and immense
Hmm.
pressure goes around in the mornings. A lot of work happens, I think, in the morning shift, but in the afternoon, because it's like that time of the day where half of the world I feel is coming back from work and you are going to work,
Yes.
it's a different ball game altogether. And once you are there, you are all by yourself. If you work for a smaller plant, if you like you said, and you have to take decisions on your own. The good, I feel like the only good part that I've seen is in some plants, if you work in the afternoons, there is a pay raise, so it
Yes.
pay you a little more. So it always, I would want to suggest this to anyone who's going to be like recently graduating or is in the industry or is looking for the job. If your schedule allows you, work for the afternoon, because then that is going to give you a lot more experience in decision making. You'll be all by yourself and you would have to apply the knowledge that you have about the industry. Maybe it is like a theoretical knowledge of the book or of the courses that you took, but you will be able to use that and take decisions on your own. But don't forget, you will always have some sort of help. Even if the supervisor is not there, you can call them. And it's more money.
No, and it's good you point out as well. It's not like you're direct, and again, this is for might be for smaller plants, but it's not like you're on your own. And if something like there's less food safety like standards or that, like they're the same level, but you have a little more leeway to make decisions because you unless something really serious is going down, you don't want to call your supervisor at 1 o'clock in the morning
Yeah.
asking them about this little thing. You would make a note to them, let them know for the next day. But I felt that I was the same way. Like I really got to really hands-on work with the production supervisor and kind of work with them because there's less people to talk to.
Yes, yes. You build good relations with, I feel I've always worked, I've worked few morning shifts as well, but I always preferred afternoon. And you build more relations with the afternoon management if you're working in the afternoon than in the morning. Because mornings you have to send side exports, imports is happening. All of that is happening and it's a chaos.
Mhm.
It's a structured chaos, is what I would
Yes.
say. So in the afternoon, all of this is not happening. The only thing is the product is getting out of the facility. It is being shipped to different plants. That's the only thing that's happening, and the production is happening on its own. Other than that, you are okay.
Mhm.
So you can always rely on the production supervisors. That's one thing I wanted to point out here. I've seen this, some QA technicians feel that they can't approach the production supervisors in terms of any quality issues. You definitely can. A production supervisor is trained for any quality issues that might arise. They know what kind of product should be leaving out of the facility. Everybody is trained on looking for food safety and quality. So you should definitely feel confident to get in touch with a production supervisor. So just one of those things as well.
That's true. And it's also good to have those connections with the supervisors because many times they are people who have worked at the company for a long time and they know the products in and out. And there's nothing wrong with, in fact, you should. It would be good encouragement and it helps give you that confidence and it builds that being able to work as a team as well. So,
Definitely. And sometimes you don't understand the machinery as much as the production supervisor would. It's always better to talk to them in case something's happening. I'll give you an example. I was working at Maple Leaf and we had some issue with grease falling onto the chickens. So I did not know where it was coming from. I was looking everywhere and I couldn't find any grease flakes or anything dripping anywhere from anywhere. And that's when I went to a production supervisor and I was like, hey, you know what? CFI has been complaining about this. What's going on? Where is it coming from? And we looked and looked, and then he told me that it's coming from the air chill line. Like, how would I know? I hardly went to that part of the facility. So he knew about it. And that's when we were able to ward off a corrective action report that CFI was possibly going to give us. So it's better to talk to them. They understand the machinery. They have been to those parts of the facility where you as a QA supervisor or a QA technician might not even go. So
Mhm.
always good.
Yes. Oh, one thing that I also was thinking about is you're working in the meat industry, and I find that this industry is it's definitely its own beast compared to other types of industries, even within the food industry. And I've always just wanted to ask people who work in this, like, why, like, you seem very passionate about it, but why did you decide to stay in that industry and you continue?
Okay. So I was, as I mentioned, I was working for an egg processing facility. After that, when I was looking for jobs to switch, I did come across Maple Leaf and I thought, okay, it's a good management and I should try. Because when decided to start my career in food, I did not develop this mindset that, hey, if ever I get to work in sector, I would not work. I was always like, if I get an opportunity, I'm going to take it, regardless. I was approached by Maple Leaf, started interviewing, and they did give me a plant tour. So that's very important. I see that a lot of meat companies do give this plant tour so that they give you an idea of what kind of environment would be working in. I hear a lot about, oh, it smells, it stinks, and this, so it's gross. But fortunately, when I started working at Maple Leaf, I was a coordinator, and I never had to go to that part of the facility. I was going more on the packaging side. It doesn't smell there at all. Nothing, absolutely nothing. And even if you pass by the plant, unless you know what they're doing inside, you wouldn't figure out that, okay, it's a meat plant. It does not smell. That's one misconception that people have about the industry. It only smells where the animals are received. Beyond that, it's all clean. So that was one thing when I saw, I was really shocked. And the very good thing that I felt about the plant was that it was very neat. I did not see any like blood on the walls and blood everywhere and people walking around in blood-stained clothes. No, that you might see in some YouTube videos, it does not happen in the plant itself. So that was one thing. And another thing is the management was really nice. They were very fair and transparent about my job responsibilities, and they clearly told me about what I was going to do and what the QA technicians did. Even with the QA technicians, they did not go on the live receiving side at all. They were only working in evisceration. So basically, evisceration is where they take the guts out of the animal. Does not smell there at all. So they were doing their inspections there, and the other QA technician was in the packaging side. So it was all good with them. I also feel something that I really want to mention here is meat industry in Canada is really huge. It's really big industry. There is lots of opportunities of growth here. And if you get in there, they also, I feel the average salary of a person working in the meat industry is higher than that of the processing. And somebody has to work in meat to get the products out and serve the community.
Mm.
Even another thing is that I feel like people talk about is that I don't know that the meat coming out of the facility, it's clean or not. It goes through a lot of hands, and I don't know. I prefer buying it from my butcher. No, if it is passed through a lot of hands, they also spray some food grade antimicrobial agent, and it goes through a lot of inspection, and all the regulations are followed. If you're buying from your local butcher shop, you never know what kind of diseases, if it is salmonella infected or E. coli infected, and if you consume that, the results are there already out in the market. You know what happens if you consume meat that is infected with this. So if you're buying meat products from industries like these, you can trust it because nothing goes out of the plant unless it is tested and the results are received, and that's when it gets shipped out. Another thing I feel about the meat industry is it's very outcome based. So everything now is on the operator itself. I think even in Maple Leaf and where I'm working now, I don't see a QA technician touching a piece of meat itself. Like, I don't see them touching hearts and tongues and livers and all of that. No, you just visually inspect it. It's the job of the production technicians to look at and maybe cut lymph nodes and make sure that the kidneys are fully popped out. None QA, I haven't seen any QA technician touching any piece of meat or getting drained in blood. No, it does not happen. It's all misconception and myths that the meat industry sees, and it's a very evolving industry. If you have experience working in the meat industry, I would suggest apply for government jobs as well. You will get a chance to possibly work at port of entries where you can work with import and export. Very nice job. And you can stay away from the plant. And if you love animals, then I guess work for the meat industry. We need people here. So please.
No, that's thank you for pointing those things out because as someone who is more familiar with the food industry, I'm more aware that it is cleaner and all those types of things, but I think more conversations have to talk about that because when it comes to meat, a lot of people are very personally connected to it in terms of because how it ties to diet. But I think
Mm.
that it's good that you point out about how clean it is, and it has to be clean because it's to be safe.
Yeah.
And as well, I also like that you pointed out because I'd asked why did you decide to stay? And I guess with meat industries, because the products that they're dealing with are so there's a higher chance of risk for food safety incidents that they have to be more structured, more following this. And it's a good way for someone to, if they are looking to get in the industry, really just jump into structure and understanding all the bits and pieces because it's always being promoted.
Yes. And I feel also that at the beginning of your career, meat industry is not easy to work with, is one thing. But once
Okay.
you are in it, you will understand that the basics is the same for meat, for fruits and vegetables, for ready to eat. Everything is the same. But with meat industry, if you work here, you would see all the kind of situations that you would possibly see in the processing side or anywhere else. So it builds you up for that. It builds you up for maybe your future. So if you work here, it's always good. And I'll give you an example. When I was working at Maple Leaf, we do care about animals. I hear this a lot. Everybody I mentioned that I'm working in the meat industry, everybody looks at me and is, but you're killing them. Yes, we are killing them because that's the demand of the industry. Like grocery stores, for example, when there was COVID 2020, I don't know if you've seen, but the grocery stores, they were empty. There was huge demand of meat out in the industry. We had to produce so much chicken that I don't think we had produced in a long time. There is a demand. That's why the animals are killed, and they're humanely killed. That's one thing. So they are not just shot or made to bleed right there when they come in. They are made unconscious so that they don't release those stress hormones and they don't see what's coming next. Once they're unconscious, that's when they are actually struck with the knife and made to
Mhm.
bleed. But yeah, I hear that a lot. And they're like, hey, you're killing animals, but you are eating them. That's why. If you
Yeah.
want a good piece of steak on your table, like a cow has to be killed.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yes. And from my understanding, I've heard from Maple Leaf Foods, like they do have individuals who their job is to make sure that everything is being done humanely and that type of thing.
yes, yes, definitely. Because then CFI is going to come to you and be like, what's going on with you? And you might have to suffer some consequences if they're not humanely killed in front of like there are inspectors to regulate. If
Mhm.
that's not happening, then you might have to face some consequences at the federal level and it taken very seriously.
No,
Yes.
I'm just thinking it's again, it's solidifying in my mind that there's also outside inspections checking on the companies
Yes.
just to make sure as well. So yeah, no, it's good to know these types of things. And we were touching upon like new graduates, and I was almost curious to know if you don't mind me asking, when if you were to look back on early in your career, did you do anything that you kinda look back now and say, like, you wish you did differently or anything like that?
Yes. I feel back then, When I just graduated, I was just lost, as I mentioned earlier. I feel like at that point, I did not have support. I did not have these connections with the peers to help me guide through and get into the industry. I did not know at that point that references definitely played a great role back then to get into the industry. If you have good references, you work with good people, it's really important to have that. I did not know that. Other than that, I feel like nobody told me at that point that if you just graduate, that's enough. You have to keep learning and growing.
Mhm.
And just do some certifications. I did not know I had to be HACCP certified or it's going to benefit me in any way when I just graduated. So I did it when I worked for Maple Leaf. That's when I got my HACCP certification because once when I was in the industry, that's when I was told that HACCP is important. Get a certification for safe quality foods, SQF, because you have to face these audits. You have to sit in the audit sometime. There's a BRC audit. I did not know about this. I had learned about it in school that companies have audits. So for that to understand, to prepare for the audit and to sit in the audit and present them papers and answer the questions of the auditor, you need to know about these certifications. I did not know back then. So I had to do them all when I was employed with Maple Leaf. I did my internal audit certification. I did my SQF and HACCP. I was going to do the GFSI, but I didn't get a chance. But keep improving. The world doesn't end when you just graduate. You have to keep exploring other things. You have to keep learning. And everything is just changing rapidly in the industry. Back, I remember 2019, SFCR, Safe Food for Canadian Regulations and Act, it came out. Everybody was lost at that point. So go through that. It is very well detailed document. It will provide you information on each and every industry that you might be interested in working in. Get some information that will help you about cracking interviews. And that's something nobody told me. And I wish I had done that differently. I wish when I graduated, or while I was going to graduate, I did these certifications so that when I was going for interviews, it would have helped me stand out. That's one thing I feel like I was lacking at that point, and something that I feel like I would have done differently. And I would also suggest the recent graduates, when you start working and possibly it's your first job, it's okay to say no. Don't take the workload of your peers. And I say it to everyone that I come across and all these graduates that I come across. You are getting paid for your own job. If you want to learn, yes, it's good. Go talk to your supervisor and tell them that, hey, I'm interested in learning about this, but don't take somebody else's workload. Don't take that responsibility unless you're fully and thoroughly trained on that. And that's the kind of mistake I did once. I was like, okay, so now I'm in the industry and I want to learn this, I want to learn that. But I was taking the job of other people. I was doing their work. I was working on Saturdays and Sundays. I wasn't paid for that. I would take home a lot of work and would do it from there. But it won't help you if you're going to stay in that company or organization for that long. It I would rather suggest be focused more on your work. If you want to take any initiative, talk to your supervisors and manager. They will guide you on how to grow in the organization. And I feel get comfortable in the organization once you join it. Don't be in a rush to, leave it, or in 3 months of time you want to become a supervisor. No, just learn few things and then, but don't do somebody else's work, because if something goes wrong, you will be responsible for that. So don't do that unless you are thoroughly trained. But yes, do express this to your supervisors or manager if you want to learn about few things. If you want to to get some certifications, talk to them openly. They'll help you. People are really nice in the industry. You can trust them.
That's really I've never thought about that because I like that you have some nuance to your advice because we hear learn as much as you can, learn as much as you can, and that's what you are saying to do. But as well, learn in a way that's you're thinking about what you're learning and why. Because yeah, no, because especially with food, your name gets put on the sheet as well. That's a good point, especially in food production. Your name is on. If you do it, your name's on it, and you wouldn't want something to go incorrect. But one of the things that you mentioned was getting certifications. And this is something I've been meaning to ask. Did you get certified through your organization, or did you, like, when you're saying to students, get an SQF certification, are they going out on their own, looking it up online and finding it, or are they getting certified through a company?
It's actually both ways. For the
Okay.
HACCP, I did it myself.
Okay.
Because I think at that point with Maple Leaf, we did not have any slots open for HACCP training. So I was like, might as well, I'll just get trained by myself. And then I showed my certification to my manager. But SQF, Maple Leaf trained me on that. And for the internal audit, yes, they trained me. That's another thing. If you're working for a bigger organization, they'll do anything to train you. So you can trust on them. Other than that, if you go online, you'll see a lot of certifications. Do them. Just make sure they're legit. Check, research thoroughly, and then just do one of those because it is going to help you further in the interview process and getting into a nicer job.
That's a good idea. And that's something, unfortunately, you do have to pay for. But as a student,
Yes.
if they really do want to stand out, if they can be like, I'm SQS certified out of the gate, like that would really be enticing for employers.
Yes. And I think, and I'm sure everybody would be aware that if your resume comes to any company, they just have 5 to 6 seconds to go through that, and you need to stand out.
Mhm.
That's not coming from me. That's coming from an HR friend. She
Okay.
said we just look at the resume for 5 to 6 seconds. If you clearly mention in your resume that you have these trainings and certifications, boom, you will be called for the interview.
Okay. Oh, it's good to know straight from the source. I'll shift my question to more. So,
Yeah.
one of the things that you said on your LinkedIn profile is that you are an adept multitasker.
Yeah.
What does that even mean? And how do you hone that skill? Let's do that because that's a really important skill when it comes to QA, especially.
Yes, I feel as a QA, you have to keep all your senses. I always say a QA technician has four sets of eyes. You have to be looking at forward, and you have to look what's going on behind, and all your senses of smell, taste, everything should be open. So when I was working at Global Egg, and I was the only QA technician in the afternoon shift, we had 5 production lines running, and I used to start my shift at 2. So in that time frame, like if I have 5 production lines to go through, I have to conduct my CCP checks. I have to take samples, send the samples to the lab, and also check the weight of the product, check the temperature of the product, pass the product to the X-ray machine, to the metal detector, and see all our controls are in place. And I was the only one doing it. So I had to make sure that I was doing that. And if there was any shipment that was coming back, I had to look at that. There were products that had to be shipped out and that required my signature. So I had to look at that. If there was any incoming raw material, I had to look at that. Then on Fridays, we had some checks that would come in from one of our facilities in Elmira, and it had to be pasteurized. I had to sign it, I had to swab it and sign it to be sent to the production floor, making sure it was salmonella free, had to sample it, send it to the lab, all of that. And if one person is doing all of that, you will develop the multitasking skills by yourself, even if you don't want to. There were days when I was like literally dying on the floor, but it keeps you going. Something happens, and again, it gives you that kind of spirit to work everywhere. And I always say that everything doesn't go smooth in a plant. Something or the other is always falling apart. And the QA technician's role is to figure it out and resolve it. I think I remember one instance. It was 12 o'clock in the morning. So our packaging would have best before date and the production date. Because it's 12 in the morning, the date should change to the next date. So
Yes.
I think I was sending samples to the lab. I was in the office and printing stuff up to be sent to the lab. And I think I went to the floor at 12:30. And I realized two of the skids that were produced on all the production floors. So 5 production lines, everything that's produced, it's of the date's wrong. The date, they didn't change the date.
Oh, okay.
So here, the thing is, I have to do my checks. That's really important. I cannot miss a CCP check because if that happens, I'm screwed. So I have to do that. And at the same time, I have to fix this issue. And then shipping is calling me that come here and sign the driver's waiting. So there's only one person to figure all of this out. So you have to prioritize when this happens. The priority is call the production supervisor, tell him that, hey, this is wrong, or production lead hand. So one thing, if there's no production supervisor, you'll have a lead hand, which is possibly one of the production technicians. In a smaller plant, it's actually a production technician, just a group leader or something. Tell him, hey, fix the issue about the boxes, the printing error. Tell him, take the product, make new boxes and print it again. Go to shipping, sign that document first because the guy's waiting for maybe an hour or so now. Do that, then do your CCP checks. Don't forget, don't miss them. Write it on the paper that, hey, this happened. Inform everyone in the plant that this happened, and that's why your CCPs are late. By informing everyone, I mean your supervisor and the manager and the people who are going to come in the morning. They don't want to see this, that the CCP checks were late. So you will develop, even if you're not a multitasker, you'll develop it once you're in the industry. It's not hard. It is going to be a daunting experience initially, but you will get a hang of it. 2 months, it is what it takes. So, yeah.
No, again, as you say that, flashbacks to when I was working in QA, and I could just say, I swear, like the same things are happening. Like I've had those situations where, and I think that is also something to bring up, that it also develops your ability to almost delegate, because you start to, even though you're not a supervisor, you do get a little bit of that taste of capacity to do it, because when you're in that situation, you're at a point where you're like, I need you to do this, please. Like,
Yeah.
do this now. You need to, like, it's the only way for you to get through that, like, multitude of things at one time.
Exactly. You just have to, yeah, please is a good word.
Yes.
You have to say that because nobody's going to listen to you otherwise. And everybody is working there. Nobody comes to work to not do the job.
Mhm.
They want to do it nicely and correctly. So if you feel like somebody's not understanding why you are trying to do what you're trying to do, explain it to them. What would it take? 2 minutes? Explain it to them, they'll understand because they also don't want to for example, they don't want to produce 10 boxes and then being told that, hey, you have to rework them. No, they'll fix it. Just explain it to them that this is the issue and could you please fix it? Please,
I-
you have to say that.
Yeah, and it's true. And it's especially in production, if something gets messed up, it doesn't just go away. Like you have to go back and fix it. Like it will come back to you at some point in some capacity. Yes.
Yes.
Hmm.
You can take the losses. If you have to throw the product out, that's loss for the company and you don't want that. Production does not want that to happen. Just figure it out at the earliest possible and production would definitely be happy to assist you only if you give them a proper reasoning of why you're doing what you do.
Hmm. See, we are coming down to the end of our podcast episode. And I usually ask my guests at this point, like, what piece of advice that would you give to a student? And I feel like you've already answered it. I'm trying to work in my head where I want this conversation to go with the last little bit.
No, I think I do have advice
Okay,
at this point.
let's do it. Okay.
Yeah, whosoever's listening, I'm sorry guys, I cannot tell you very clear details about CFIA, but I would always suggest go to gcjobs.ca and always look for any government positions. I'll tell you, Veronica, when I started working in the industry, I was under the impression that you cannot apply for government jobs until you have worked for a certain number of years in the industry, and that's when you can apply for government jobs. That's not true.
Mhm.
And one of the CFI inspectors himself told me to apply. And I'm really thankful to that guy even today. I am still in touch with that person, but I'm really thankful that somebody actually suggested to apply. And there is this myth going around in the industry that you cannot apply. So if you see some jobs online right now, there are so many jobs. If you are working as a lab technician or if you're interested, there are so many jobs for that. Various positions are open. If you have experience working as a microbiological technician, then there's that position. If you are a veterinarian, you have that opportunity. So always keep looking for opportunities on Indeed as well as GC jobs, because they have all the list of government jobs. Government job is good to work with. That's what my parents told. I don't know how. I think they also work in the government back home, so they always suggested. So I would also suggest always set up a goal. If let's say you want to work for Nestle, for example, set up a goal how to reach there. Get in touch with anybody who works there. Everybody in the industry would love to help you. Reach out to as many people as you can. Ask them if they would know of any opportunities. Look out for opportunities on Indeed. On LinkedIn is something, there's something that I felt that the opportunities come later on LinkedIn than they come on Indeed. So you can just apply on Indeed, the first thing. Don't apply on Saturdays. Always apply on Sunday nights.
Okay.
Because Monday mornings when the plant's open and the HR is there, your job application would be at the top. So yeah, that's something that I
No,
thought.
those are really, thank you for sharing that. I think government is definitely something that even I admit, like it wasn't even until recently within the past few months that I even consider, I'm not that I'm considering to go into government, but I even had it on the radar because we think of government as politics working and that type, but there's more to our government than just that. And these government roles need people who are from all walks of life in order to, at least in the food industry, keep it safe. So it's really and also just that little tidbit about just apply when you apply, because we don't think about these other little alternate factors that do sadly do play a role in how our resume gets perceived.
Yes, and don't exceed your resume for more than 2 pages. If it is a 3 page, nobody's going to look at it.
Mm,
And just 2 pages, 1 page or 2 page maximum, and be consistent. If you're mentioning about one job in 5 points, the other job has to also have 5 points. Don't I see that somebody sent their resume out to me like a year ago. Something that I noticed was everybody wants a job. That's true. But how much effort are you putting in your resume also counts. If your resume has formatting issues, the font's not correct, spacing's not correct, you're not going to land into your dream job even if you have tons of experience. If you cannot fix the resume, I don't think a company would trust you in fixing the anything that goes wrong or for any job role. So please make sure your resume speaks out for who you are and what you would possibly do. If there are any issues, you can get somebody to proofread it as well and help you fix that. So please take some time to fix your resume if you haven't. And once you have done that, then just apply for a job and don't get disheartened if you don't hear back from a job that you applied. You have to apply for, let's say, 50 jobs to even hear from one of the company. So that's just one another thing.
mm. I always love just sometimes we just, instead of hearing those like big follow your passion advice, follow this, sometimes we need to hear like the nitty gritty advice because these are the things that matter. So thank you
Yeah.
so much for sharing that. So with that being said, Vasudha, thank you so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate you, talking about again to the meat industry, because I've been wanting to get some people on the show related to that. And it really, I think we need to have these conversations to help hear perspectives of how it actually works and not making it some black box of you need where I'm getting at. So
Yes,
thank you so much for coming on the show. One last question I forgot to ask. Where can people find you?
I am on LinkedIn. My I think username is Vasudha Sabharwal as such. And if you can shoot out a text to me over there, then we can discuss from there. My email is quite big for me to even say enough on
Let's just do LinkedIn.
this. But if anybody wants to get in touch, you can. And keep doing this, Veronica. It's really helpful.
That was episode 45 of the FoodGrads Podcast. All the notes to this podcast can be found on the FoodGrads blog or by clicking on the Student and Grads tab on the homepage. There you can find any notes to past or future episodes. Do you know anyone you would like me to interview on the show? Perhaps yourself, or maybe there's a specific career path you would like me to explore? Then reach out and let me know. You can email me at veronica@foodgrads.com or any of the FoodGrads social media channels. Hope to hear from you. Well, that was a fun episode learning about Vasudha's career journey. I really felt that Vasudha is passionate about what she does, and it does really seem like she has reflected a lot on what she has done and has really taken those experiences and learned and grown and really pushed her career forward with it. And it was personally fun reminiscing about my past working in quality assurance and doing shift work. It's something that I forget myself about how different shifts have different feelings to it and how important it is to consider the time that you work in terms of your career. If you have ever worked in the restaurant industry, you would know that there are different feelings to different times of the day when it comes to working, and just take it into consideration. Not to mention, there is many opportunities that are available for afternoon and night shifts in the food industry. So don't limit yourself, especially when you're a new graduate, because taking on these different shifts can really push you forward and just force you to grow at a faster rate than you ever thought was possible. So just consider that in your next steps. Anyways, that's it for this week's episode. Thank you everyone so much for listening, and I will see you next time.